I joined Bank of America in 1956 when I was a little airman, second class, stationed in Saudi Arabia. Opened my account, and I'd had an account with them for 53 years until 2009. I quit them. They're not the same bank today that they were then. You know, I was in the military for 20 years, fought in Vietnam, decorated 10 times for heroism and gallantry, other things. What did I do that for? The bottom line is the big banks are screwing the American taxpayer.
One of the reasons that we're suing Bank of America aggressively for Mr. Smith is that he's not alone in this. There are a lot of people that come to us with the same story, that they were told to skip payments, thinking it would somehow help them, that they awaited loan modification paperwork for month after month, that they were lied to and told that their applications weren't received, and that these applications were dangled in front of them as some kind of a carrot, when in actuality, foreclosure was always inevitable.
I submitted my first paperwork and they lost it, of course. And then I resubmitted, and after a couple of months, I'd call them every week or every 2 or 3 days trying to get information. When's it going to be done? When am I going to get some results? And they just kept saying, well, it takes 30 days to get it into the computer, and then it takes 30 days to get it assigned to a negotiator. Meanwhile, and then after the negotiator got it, she looked it over and said, no, turned down.
Bank of America tricked him into it. Bank of America not only tricked him into this unaffordable loan with promises of future refinancing, but Bank of America also tricked Mr. Smith into destroying his credit over this HAMP nonsense, saying that he had to be 2 months late before he would be considered for a loan modification. It ruined his credit. It would have been better for him to surrender his ranch a year and a half ago and still have pretty good credit instead of month after month awaiting this fantastical imaginary loan modification paperwork that never came. One of the grounds for our lawsuit against Bank of America is that Bank of America tricked Mr. Smith into thinking that it would benefit him to get late on his payment. Bank of America encouraged Mr. Smith to go behind. Mr. Smith was current when he sought a refinance. Mr. Smith was current, had been current for his entire life, had never missed a mortgage payment in his entire life, and then he was told that in order to be considered for a loan modification, he needed to be late. Well, that's ridiculous. In order to be considered for the HAMP program, which provides money to the bank, he needed to be late for the bank to get that government incentive. Well, what a catastrophe that the HAMP program is now being used by the bank to get more money, and then the bank is telling its borrowers that they have to be late, and then if they deny them for the HAMP program, that person's credit is destroyed and they're no better off for being late. Why not provide a HAMP calculator for someone to figure out with the hand calculator whether or not they fit the very clear HAMP guidelines before you tell them to go late? Mr. Smith is a 70-year-old man who had fantastic credit his entire life, owned multiple pieces of property, and now in his twilight years, his credit is destroyed. That is Bank of America's fault. That is not his fault or his bad judgment in over-borrowing. That is banking policy and government policy, and he's a victim of it. It is the bank's responsibility not to encourage their borrowers to go late so that the bank can get a little bit more government money. A person's life is destroyed, and the bank representative on the other end of the phone makes it sound beneficial to skip payments. They need to tell the person, but this is going to wreck your credit. You're going to have late fees. The payment, we're not going to go back and accept just an individual payment, and that you're going to be railroaded into foreclosure. We look upon it as a way to streamline the foreclosure process.
They told me over and over that while I was in the MOD program, I would not be given a notice of default. That was a lie. Well, I knew that it was time I had to get an attorney to try to save my property after they turned me down the third time.
It's one thing to tell a borrower to apply for a loan modification and then turn them down. It's another thing to tell them to apply over and over and over and lose the paperwork and continue to request new paperwork and allow months and months and months to go by while the borrower's credit is being destroyed and late fees are piling on and the eventual payment balloons to an impossible sum. This is horrible behavior. It looks as though the bank is doing it to intentionally railroad someone into the foreclosure process, to take the house. Isn't that the very essence of a predatory loan? You give a loan with the intention of getting the property, not getting interest on the loan. We think that that's what Bank of America did. Now, predatory lending is not even necessarily illegal, but lying to someone and destroying their credit while pretending like missing payments is going to help them, that is fraud. That is illegal. Jurors are livid at the banks. Juries are angry at the banks for the abusive treatment of the borrowers. Jurors understand that it's not just some kind of social insanity that caused everybody to overborrow all at once. The banks deceived people into getting into loans that they didn't understand the terms of. Jurors are actually punishing the banks for this conduct. It's just terrible treatment. It's abusive. There's no other business setting that allows somebody, one party, to consistently deceive the other party and get away with it. But for some reason, the banks thought they could just deceive everyone. Well, we are holding them accountable.